Mic on. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our second budget hearing. Today is Tuesday, September 24th, 2024, 6 p.m. Mr. Clark, if you could please take the roll.
Councilmember Lord.
Here.
Councilmember Duncan. Councilmember Ramirez.
Here.
Vice Mayor Callahan.
Here.
Mayor Mairbach.
Present.
Quorum.
Councilmember Duncan, I think, is walking through the door right now. So
Always wanting to make it out.
there you go. So Councilman Duncan is now present with us as well. So if you'd all please rise with me and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We're gonna do things. I want to do things just a little bit. Need to move the budget hearing and the trim notice hearing to the front of the agenda. So, Mauricio, if you could please go ahead and start off with that, please, and read those two items for me. Actually, let me start off with the open. I'm going to open public comments first. So, the floor is now open for public comments. Anybody wishing to speak, please come forward. And there is none. Mauricio, if you could please read the instructions for calling in.
Please be advised that when joining the meeting, you are automatically muted. Welcome to tonight's meeting. The public was able to make public comments prior to the meeting, either by leaving a voicemail message or sending an email to the town clerk. There were no public comments received by the clerk's office for tonight's meeting. If you wish to speak tonight, please press *9 and the host will be alerted. Pressing *9 is known as raising your hand. Once you press *9, you will be placed in a queue to speak and will be called upon by your name or the last 3 digits of your telephone number. Please wait to be called upon. Please state your name and address. If you are a hired consultant or town employee and/or if you are engaged in lobbying activities and/or representing an organization, please provide that information before speaking. Please be sure to be in a quiet area to avoid unnecessary noise. A time limit of 3 minutes will be imposed for each speaker during public comments. Your cooperation is appreciated.
All right. Is there anybody in the queue wishing to speak?
Currently, no one in the queue.
Okay. Public comments is now closed. So Mauricio, if you could please read the resolution 11A as well as 11B for us, please.
Resolution 11A, a resolution of the mayor and the town council of the town of Cutler Bay, Florida, adopting the final millage rate of the town of Cutler Bay for the fiscal year commencing October 1, 2024 through September 30, 2025, pursuant to section 200.065 Florida statutes and providing for an effective date. Resolution 11B, a resolution of the mayor and the town council of the town of Cutler Bay, Florida, adopting the final operating and capital outlay budget for the fiscal year commencing October 1, 2024 through September 30, 2025, pursuant to section 200.065 Florida statutes, authorizing the town manager to make expenditures consistent therewith and authorizing the town manager to make certain budget amendments within a department, provided that the total of the appropriations is not changed, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you, members of council. At this time, I'd like to have Robert Dadari, our finance director, read the required trim notice into the record. Robert?
Thank you. Good evening. This is the trim statement for the second budget hearing. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so the statement reads as follows. The tentative millage rate of the town of Cutler Bay for fiscal year 2024-25 of 2.8332 mils per $1,000 of assessed property value within the town of Cutler Bay is 9.78% greater than the rolled back rate of 2.5809 mils per $1,000 of assessed property value. Ad valorem taxes are being increased primarily to help provide for operating expenditures required to maintain current levels of resident services, including police services, reflecting the increases in those costs due to current economic conditions and inflationary trends that are anticipated to continue in the upcoming fiscal year, and for police services, reflecting negotiated union contract costs.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. So Mayor, members of council, if I could have the clerk put up on the screen our a little quick brief presentation that we'd like to share with the council and the folks that are here, and as well as the folks that are watching online. So as I mentioned, tonight's our second and final budget hearing, September 24th. I'll go through these really quickly. This is just general background of the town. We've seen this before at our first budget hearing. Obviously, the leadership of the council, charter officials, directors, organization chart, most importantly, obviously, Cutler Bay residents, mayor and council, the 3 charter positions. Town mission statement, like as I've done in the past, like to take a couple seconds to read it. The town's mission statement: the town council will work to make Cutler Bay an excellent place to live, work, and play. Cutler Bay's government will be creative, responsive, and respectful in providing innovative and cost-effective services to the community. This was adopted via Resolution 1264. Vision: Cutler Bay will be recognized as one of the most desirable communities in South Florida to live, work, and play. Its schools, homes, and parks and cultural facilities offer an enriching environment for children, adults, and seniors alike, and its local economy encourages outstanding companies to want to do business here. Also, in theme with our budget hearings tonight, financial stability: the fiscal viability of the town is a primary concern of its elected officials, its residents, and its employees. Short and long-term financial stability is critically important to the ultimate realization of the town's vision. This service area has 4 components: fiscal responsibility, fiscal transparency, capital building programs, and growth management. Our quick journey, Mayor, members of council, we started this back in July of 31 when we had our first budget visiting workshop. We talked about our American Rescue Plan. Very proud that we had over 528 views when we posted that meeting, as well as our second budget workshop in which we discussed general funds that are funded by ad valorem and a lot of sales tax and property taxes. We had over 760 views. And also on August 29th, where we talked about all the funds, we had over 360 views. And then also on September the 10th, our first budget hearing, we had over 283 views. Other community conversations, I had a briefing with Encompass Health, their management staff and employees on August the 9th. We had our second open mic on August 26th that we were here in the council chamber in person. And also we had over 921 views that we started talking about the budget priorities and upcoming budget workshops. Also, we had an East Ridge Senior Living Facility on August the 28th, and we held that in person. And most recently, yesterday, I hosted our first ever Twitter Space open mic on Twitter Live, as that makes sense, right? So, our first budget hearing notice was published in the trim notice, and very familiar trim notice here for the residents. It stated the date and time of our first budget hearing. This was mailed out by the property appraiser's office to all the homeowners. Their second budget hearing notice was advertised in the Miami Herald this past Sunday in the Maine Herald. Per state law, this is the actual copy of the advertisement announcing this meeting here. Budget workshops and notices. How do we get the word out? We blasted out on our e-news back in July. We had over 4,800 subscribers. We also use our center pages of community newspapers that we posted it. Also posted it on our town website. We also displayed it on our electronic message boards. We have 2 in town: Caribbean Boulevard 107th and Marlin Old Cutler Road. And as I mentioned, we discussed it in our open mic night, Twitter space, and 2 community meetings, which was Encompass Health and East Ridge Community Living. Focusing now on our millage rate, the current millage rate is 2.8332. There, I just want to show this graphic here that shows that we are still one of the lowest within Miami-Dade County there. These are the 2023 adopted millage rates. Actions that the council set. When we started our journey for the budget workshops, we actually had a ceiling rate that we created, 3.006, even though our current rate is 2.8332, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then this resolution set the ceiling rate, as we call it, that was noticed by the trim notice and by the property appraiser, and it also set the 2 budget hearing dates, September 10th and September 24th, which we're here today. Millage rate over the last 10 years, we are very proud to keep it stable the last 3 years at 2.8332. And here we have a correlation of what we have at our actual fund balance of $26,617,000. I think for next year, I'm going to try to combine those two because you can see kind of like almost like a direct correlation there. As you can see, when we've kind of lowered the millage rate, we had to actually do what we call the old plan dip, as some of the council members recall there. Also, just to recap our first budget workshop that we had on July 31st, as I mentioned, we had about 8 views. We discussed our American Rescue Plan, what we're doing with the $10 million for the general services. Every time we spend money from the American Rescue Plan, we bring it before the town council in the form of resolution. It does a couple of things. One, it gets vetted by myself as well as the town attorney to make sure that the expense complies with the American Rescue Plan requirements. The remaining $11 million are used for what we call water quality improvement projects. Many of those you see under construction as we speak. And then a lot of the other funds that we have, ARPA funds, we actually combine it to use it as some type of matching grants that we discussed during our first budget workshop. And you can see there all the different roadway projects that we have. Second budget workshop was on August the 19th. We had over 760 views. Some of the priorities there, we started introducing the revenues, some the departmental expenditures, as well as the departmental budget worksheets. Those are the actual worksheets that are developed by the department heads that I review, and that's the actual copies that are posted online and the council sees as well. Third budget workshop was held on August 29th. We had over 360 views there. And here we started talking about all the different special revenue funds that we have, such as a lot of different grants that we received, the CITT, the ARPA funds, our stormwater utility fund as well was discussed at that time. And then going back to what we talked about, the trim notice, just a quick recap of how to read that, because sometimes these notices are very intimidating to residents that they're mailed by the property appraiser's office. Our town folio number starts with 36, so we're 36 means that you're within Cutler Bay. There we are right there under municipality. This particular property has a millage rate of 2.8332 that we're going to discuss. It was assessed at $150,000. 2.8332 is our millage rate, $425. This year went up in value according to the property appraiser from 150 to 156. They are using the rollback rate, as Robert mentioned in the trim notice, of 2.5089, and it would be $403. Now, that 3.006 is the ceiling millage rate that we have set early on, and this property using the ceiling millage rate would have received property values, not property value, but the taxes that will be received would be $468. So that delta right there would have been an increase of $43.18 based on the ceiling rate that we created. So since then, we have reduced the ceiling rate to the existing rate of 2.8332, and now that same property, instead of going up to $43, is actually going up $17. Yeah, so I think this is very important graphically to show that impact. Again, this is just a property there that we selected. Also, it announced the council meeting on budget hearing on September the 10th at 6 p.m. And then new for this year, we talked about the non-ad valorem assessment, which is our stormwater utility fee, which is the $90 per year fee. This one here, as you recall, we actually adopted a resolution to move to what's called the unified billing method through the property appraiser. Previously, this fee was billed by Miami-Dade County Water and Sewer Department on behalf of the town. Same rate, did not go up, $90 per year, $7.50. We simply moved it from one billing method to another billing method. And also this resolution set the hearing date for our first budget hearing, which was September the 10th, in which we then mailed over 14,000 notices from the town to those residents that are being impacted with the stormwater utility fee. We also then did an informational video. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for collaborating there and assisting us with that video. We actually had over nearly 6,000 views kind of explaining the process. I think the biggest thing there was making sure that residents said this is not a new fee. This is just a fee that's being billed on the unified billing method versus Miami-Dade County Water and Sewer Department. And then also, as per state law, we advertise in the Miami Herald as well. So our first budget hearing recap. What we did there was it was on September the 10th. We had over 283 views besides the folks that were here in the audience. So the notice for that was published on the trim notice. And then we actually then created this book, which, you know, we have here, and there's actually a book in the back for the resident, for members in the audience that would like to see it. But again, it's also posted online. And what we did was kind of how to read this book. We also talked about tab 4, our fund balance reserve policy, and then also our millage rate cost per department that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So how to read this book. The budget book that we have posted online from our first budget hearing, and you'll see it again tonight, is we have the executive summary, which is my executive summary, kind of recapping all the different activities there and expenses. We also have break it down by department. We also talk about the special revenue funds and then also the stormwater utility funds. So what did the council do during that first budget hearing? We did a couple of actions. The first action we did was we adopted 24-56 resolution setting a lower millage rate. As you recall, the millage rate ceiling was at 3.006 per thousand assessed value. And now with resolution 2456, we then lowered it to 2.8332, which is our existing current millage rate. Second action that was completed by the town council was adopting a tentative operating capital outlay budget for the fiscal year, and in which this one here, all our funds, not only general fund and also our special revenue funds, is at $117 million and some change there. So some of the things we talked about was, you know, actually kind of how do you read the budget worksheet? So this is our general fund. We call this our revenue. So we have actually the actuals, this column here that I have highlighted from fiscal year 22-23. Then we have the adopted from fiscal year 23-24 of 2.8332. And then at that point, with the first budget hearing, we had the proposed revenues based on the 3.006 millage rate. We also have the next column there, which talks about the different net changes from one fiscal year to the other. So there you have a snapshot of 3 previous fiscal years. And then we also have our little notes there, footnotes, and that are defined on the next page of, you know, different items. What are the different significant changes there that we have? So we try to make it clear and easy to follow. We also discussed individual departments. You know, here's an example of, I call it the mayor and council, town council workshop. Council budget. We have the town clerk, general government, which is comprised of the town manager's office and administrative services department. We have the finance department, town attorney's office, community development, which is comprised of building and zoning and code compliance. We have our public works. We have our police services that we contract out, and then we have our parks and recreation, department. So each department, we picked the mayor and council, has the budget summary worksheet, which has the significant changes identified there. You can see the net change from the adopted budget to the proposed budget, and they're highlighted below. We then try to put that graphically in the pie charts, as you can see what some of those expenses are. And then most importantly, the budget worksheets, as I mentioned before, this is exactly what each department head reviews, submits to us, and we provide that in part of our budget book to the council and to the community. We have our fiscal year 2023 adopted budget. We have what we are proposing for this fiscal year's budget. We'll have if there's any council changes between the first and second budget hearing, and then the manager's request. So the updated fund policy for this coming budget here, since we reduced the millage rate from 3.006 to 2.8332, we, both myself and Robert, updated that fund balance policy that's included in this book as well. And also, as per our town charter, we updated the millage cost per department. As you can see, there was this tentative millage rate, 2.8332. In the past, it would have said 3.006, and those numbers are then recalculated there. So today's budget hearing, as I mentioned, was advertised in Sunday Miami Herald on September 22nd. Quickly, these are the, 3 times that the council had, workshops. Then we have our state mandated public hearings. We had held one on September 10th, and obviously tonight we have our final public budget hearing per state law. Today's budget hearing, you'll see the same type of format for the book. As I mentioned, Miami Herald, how to read the book. We have updated the tab 4 for updated fund balance reserve policy. We also have tab 5 for the millage rate cost per department that has been updated. Same format as we did in the first budget hearing, executive summary, departmental details, special revenue funds, stormwater utility funds. I also want to recap some of the questions that were asked by the council during our first budget hearing. One of the questions that was asked was, okay, we have this budget worksheet here, just making sure that we understand how to read it. So I think it was important for us to show graphically what you see. So here you have last year's fiscal 23-24, and I circled that little box there where you can see, I'm using that example, the $35,000 for the council members. Again, that's combined, okay? That's not each. I just want to make sure that's very clear, so there was no raises there, obviously, so it's just combined, okay? And then really what I want to show graphically is how that one budget worksheet from the previous year communicates with the one from this year. So that $35,584 is the, I guess we want to call it starting balance, or in the fiscal year 2024 adopted budget. And then you have the last year's COLA was 10.15. That 10.15 is added to the 35,584, obviously, split up in the positions, and that is that delta there, which is that 10.15 there. That's that $39,000 there. So, and that'll be the same process for each type of account. Also, town salaries, right? We talked about that comparison with previous years, 20 to 2024. The cost of living per town resolution 1730, which we set back in 2017. We also have annual performance merit reviews. That occurs on the employee's anniversary date. And then we also have what we call other developmental certificates reclassifications. For example, if an employee receives a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, becomes an arborist, a certified floodplain manager, items that are in that benefit that position in the profession that must be approved by both the department head and myself as well. So that'll benefit the town. So going into the budget worksheets, again, the general government, you'll see the expenses side there. You'll see there where it talks about salaries, and I apologize, it's kind of hard to read there, but I just want to show graphically how the budget book works. So we have general government, which is comprised of the town manager's office, as well as administrative services department. You have the summary in the general budget worksheet, but then you have on the side here, right there, is the breakdown of the department's salaries there. So some of the questions that we received, since our first budget workshop, from individual council members, I think it was important for me to explain is how to read this. So I'm using just one, example here, executive assistant town manager. So here we are, salary was $74,500. New in the budget, it says $84,000. That is not a $10,000 increase. It's going to above that. This is actually from last year's COLA plus the anniversary. That is that delta that we talk about from here to here. So I think, and we'll get, as we get further along, make some possible changes next year to make it easier to read. Again, this is what we do every day, but I think it's important for us to make it even more transparent. The COLA right now, the way we do it is that we do what was called a pooled COLA. So in this budget here, you'll see the 7.72 and you'll see the $62,000 COLA, but that is split up with all the positions above. And then you also have a merit pool maximum of 3%. So one of the things that I highlighted a couple of times was the resolution that was adopted by the town council back in 2017, where it very specifically talked about how we're going to treat the cost of living moving forward. It designates the use of the Pacific Consumer Index table for calculating the inflation rate, the consumer price index for all urban and consumer CPI, and the actual series that we have. So we actually draw down to the greater Miami-Fort Lauderdale area for that consumer price index. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different than, say, I don't know, Glades County, for example, right? So we made sure that that's drawn down. So another question that was asked during our budget workshop was the communication consultant. I think it was important just for us to highlight that this is an item that was in the professional services department under the general government, which is budgeted if needed to support the communications manager. We call that the placeholder. So sometimes you hear me say placeholder, but I think it was important for graphically to me to explain to the community and the council what we call as the placeholder. That is if needed at all. Again, if it's not needed, it just kind of gets rolled back in. Also, another question was the grant consultant. Well, we talked about that, was actually adopted in 2024, 39 via resolution. That was something that I came to the council increasing from $36,000 to $60,000 because of the increased workload for our grants consultant. And also what we did was we rebranded the part-time grant coordinator position within the town manager's office and created an administrative assistant to make it more effective and more efficient. Because what was occurring there was that it was almost like a little duplication of work there. We had the person who was writing the grants, but they had somebody else kind of doing the reports. So it was more cost effective to do it this way. So changes to next year's budget book, some of the things that we kind of lessons learned, right? Is what we're going to do is right now we have this COLA and merit that's pooled. In next fiscal year, we're going to kind of show it, even to have a separate spreadsheet that's going to show the journey. The journey, as I mentioned, was, you know, the one that we highlighted, say, you know, yeah, I mean, again, I'm just focusing on executive assistant to town manager, went from 74,500 to 84. How did you get there, right? And we're going to show that graphically in a spreadsheet so that way. And then also, instead of having the pooled COLA, we're actually going to have the COLA that's assigned to each position to make it a little bit easier read for both the council and the members of the community. And I know that we've already read the trim notice into the record, so I was just, you know, again, just, you know, keeping that statement there. And at that point, Mayor, we could begin. As I mentioned before, we have gone through the budget. I'm prepared to talk about any questions or departments that we have. And the clerk's office could pop up any department that you would have any questions. So at that point, Mayor, that completes my report and certainly open for your comments and public comments.
All right, I'm going to start off with public comments. Anybody in the public wishing to speak, please come forward, open the public hearing for both of these items. There is none in the audience. Is there anybody in the queue wishing to speak?
No one in the queue.
Okay, public hearing is now closed. So I'm going to open up to the council for questions, concerns. Vice Mayor, would you like to address the council?
No,
I'll let you go.
anybody else has questions? Okay. So this is something that's concerned me over the years. And shame on me for not sticking to my guns and really pursuing this. But I want it to be perfectly clear that my comments going forward are strictly based on COLA, not based on performance, not based on town staff, not based on anything else, but looking at COLA, right? I was part of the council in 2017 that actually passed this resolution, right? That established more of a guideline on how we're going to determine COLA, because prior to that, just wasn't really a solid method. And I'll be honest with you, and I'll speak for the council. None of us on the council really knew how to calculate COLA. I spent 5 hours today researching COLA. I'm trying to figure out how this is calculated. And when we look at the resolution, right, and we say, okay, this is the way that we're going to determine based on the CPI, and even drilling down further to the urban consumers, specifically for Miami and Fort Lauderdale, as we should, we look at it in 2017, and the COLA was 1.78%. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair, right? But I don't know if any of us could have really anticipated how this was going to be calculated moving forward. And before I get to that, Ralph, but yes, please put a column in between FY 23-24 budget, FY 24-25 budget, right? And that column needs to list and justify the difference between the 23-24, 24-25, right? And you're on the right track, COLA, merit, but we also have to take into considerations that there's other things that are in there, you know, like certificates and licenses and et cetera, because you know what people are doing. People are sitting home with their calculators and going, that's not that percentage, right? And we know, well, they got a few extra dollars because they got this particular certificate, degree, or whatever. And we can take a look at the administrative service director. There's a huge gap between 23 and 24, 24 and 25, right? And people are going to try to negotiate that percentage all day long and rack their brains out. What they don't understand, that was a contract negotiation. All right. So please make sure that we can have that clarity in the budget moving forward. In doing my research on COLA, right? If you search COLA on the internet, right, the first 25 pages deals with Social Security. Because really, a lot of what people talk about COLA has to do with Social Security, right? And the other, when after looking at Social, it took me a lot more diving to get out of Social Security and finally get into the Consumer Price Index, right? To figure out, you know, how we're calculating COLA. But an interesting fact, right? Coming up in this next year, 46% of American companies polled have decided not to give merit or COLA or any type of increases to their employees this year. 46%. When we look at COLA, and the biggest comparison is Social Security. When we look at 2023, Social Security COLA was 8.7%. Town of Cutler Bay was 10.15. In 2024, Social Security's COLA was 3.2. Our budget calls for 7.72%. Last year, with a 10.15 COLA and a 3% merit, that was a 13.15% raise in salaries. That is astronomical. I mean, most companies offer merit raises. And I understand that COLA goes back and forth depending on the CPI. And one of the things about the CPI that's deceiving is that our CPI is based on an annual reflection, but the CPI is only delivered in different months, right? So the COLA, or the Consumer Price Index, coming out for 2025 does not come out until October. So it's very cumbersome to look at where the actual annual percentage rate is based on what month you're looking at and what month you take it, because it's a rolling 12 months, right? April to April, August to August, October to October. That's how the Consumer Price Index eventually ends up at an annual rate. I know that we have to be good stewards of our residents' money, and in looking at the figures, right? The figures aren't inaccurate. All right, so the figures are accurate on how the town's COLA was based. But my continued struggle, and especially when we were dipping into the funds, that we continue to have 8%, 10%, 12% employee raises, which includes COLA and merit. I mean, who knows where we're going to be next year, the year after? I just struggle with COLA. I mean, merit, that's a given. I just struggle with COLA, and I have said it on this dais many times before. It's just hard to justify, especially last year, a 13.15% increase. What I propose, and had the CPI been a little bit more accurate back in 2017, and not at 1.78%. But I guarantee you, had that number been 10.15%, never would have passed. So I struggle with this, but I strongly believe that there needs to be a cap on COLA. Regardless of what the CPI is, there needs to be a cap. We need to cap raises at a total percentage. If 6%, 7%, if you want to say, hey, 5% merit, 2% COLA, right? You know, that way you have the flexibility of being able to give high-performing employees, reward them for more of their efforts. I mean, I'm okay with that. I just struggle with the way that it's set up now, that there's no control. And, you know, I get it's based on inflation and all of that kind of stuff. I get that. But, you know, when you're talking about 46% of American companies polled are not going to give their employees any raises. In fact, the Communication Workers of America just came off strike and they didn't get 13.15% raise. So, you know, I think I think the intention was correct. I just don't think that any of us anticipated that these type of calculations would lead to these types of increases. I mean, I would certainly motion, you know, to cap the COLA or cap the total. If you want to, again, 2% COLA, 5% merit, however it is. But, you know, based on all of what I've looked at today, and I've gone back throughout the years since I've become a council member, it just continues to bug me. And I understand, you know, hey, retention. Yeah, I get it. But, you know, if we lost somebody because they could get a job for a few $100 more, there would be 100 applicants ready to fill that position. So I'm not sure that that's a great justification for just allowing there not to be a certain kind of control on this. So anyway, thank you.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one or two quick questions for the Vice Mayor. In your research, the figures that you came up with, the estimations of Social Security percentage, and how that changes from year to year, was that on a national level, or was that based on Miami-Dade County or the city of Miami, or, you know?
It is based nationally, but it's my understanding that Social Security COLA is distributed nationally based on that percentage.
So just one thing to consider is if in Miami-Dade County, of course, it costs a lot of money to live here versus, you know, Gilchrist County, Florida, or any other smaller county. So if the Social Security number that we're discussing here, as far as a COLA increase for Social Security, is 3% to whatever it is at the national level, that money will go farther in Gilchrist County than it will in Dade County, just because of the cost of living difference. So I just want to be clear and understand that because it does cost more to live in Dade County, we can't necessarily just look at that Social Security national number as it relates to the figures that we deal with here, just because the cost of living here is substantially more than probably substantially more than the average.
But what you're looking at is that the folks in Miami-Dade County are getting a 3.2% raise, and the folks in you know, Iowa are getting that same raise. And you're absolutely correct. That money is going to go farther there than it is here. But the fact of the matter is that the percentage of raise in Social Security is still the same, right? And so I've just used that as an analogy, and not as a mitigating factor.
Yeah, and I think my point really is more so, and I agree with you. I do think that we need to examine how we look at COLA moving forward, because to have that type of a fluctuation year to year from 10% to 7%, the 3% merit is perfectly understandable, because that is it's for retention, and you're rewarding people for good work and for continuing to serve the town. But, you know, the fluctuation from year to year, from 7 to 10 to 8 to this to that, I think that we should look at being a little more predictable, or finding ways to be a little more predictable. I do just want to say that if we're looking at the national numbers, I think we need to be a little bit more specific as it pertains to Miami-Dade County, just because the cost of living here is different than what that national number is.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. The CPI that I did the research on is based Miami, Fort Lauderdale. right? So all of that, and again, like I said in the beginning, the numbers that were calculated are correct based on the urban CPI for Miami-Dade and Fort Lauderdale, right? They are. But what I'm saying is that still, it's
Yeah.
a tough nut to swallow.
Again, I think both points are valid. You have another comment?
I have just one more. I would say that I considering a cap, but would we consider, as opposed to just using the CPI index, that we just consider inflation? Because the whole idea of cost of living adjustments is to go with inflation, and as prices go up, you're not looking at inflation consistently at 8%, 9%, or 7%. You know, you're looking at a much lower inflationary number on average. So if you at least have a COLA increase matched to an inflation percentage across the board, then that might be
Yeah,
something that.
agreed. That's why I think that Resolution 1730 needs to be revisited.
Thank you very much.
All right. Anybody else with comments? Councilman Ramirez.
All right. First off, I want to echo some of the things the Vice Mayor said. As a longtime employee of the county, we had raises anywhere from early in my career, 5% down to 0% for several years. I want to clarify something on the Social Security thing when you brought up the 8.7%. That was because there were issues with the CPI and inflationary rate leading up to that year, which happened in 2020 or 2022. I'm sorry, happened in 2022. So it was like it was a catch up. It just happened to have that. But I think Social Security has been in the 2 point something range for, 1.5 to 2.6 or something like that, for a very long time. I'm not opposed to looking, and also our merits also were capped at 5%. So unless you got a degree or you got something else that even the degrees changed what you would get going forward, and that number was not spectacularly high, but I mean, I think it was probably in the 3 or 4% range per pay period. So it was cumulative. I'm not overly opposed to a cap on the annual raises. Merit is something that's earned, I think we can talk about what kind of numbers we look at for merit overall forward, because at some point we do have to control the funds that are going out, and we have a responsibility to our residents to make sure that we're doing that. Even if it doesn't change, if we look at it and say, okay, we like what's going on, this is the way it should be, I'm not opposed to that. But I think we probably have to dig deeper on. You dug pretty deep. I mean, I think you free dove on that one. So I think we cannot excuse his comments at all. I mean, they have a lot of merit, and that's worth 5%. But that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
All right, Councilman Lord.
I do agree with looking at reworking the 2017 COLA ordinance. When I was doing, it looks like we all did a lot of research on this. In 22, we were at 4.36 for our COLA. And then in 23, it jumped up to 10.15. There has to be some control there. We are accountable for our taxpayer dollars. They're not just our residents, they're yours, they're mine. They need to be used more wisely. The merit, the national average for a merit increase is 3 to 4%. So I think we're good there. But I am interested in reworking that. The COLA, capping it somehow, I think it deems a further look.
From what I hear, and again, when I was a councilman, I did the same thing that the vice mayor here is bringing up. It's like, guys, I think we should relook at how we're doing this. And it was shot down. It's a real complicated issue. It's not something you can just quite honestly, it's not something you can fix in a half hour and think we're going to have the right formula. A prior resolution came forward with work. And at the time, it seemed like it was good. In hindsight, it probably seemed like it may be not so good. And it sounds like it's the will of the council maybe to start looking at this again, but perhaps bring another resolution to amend that resolution or to find another way. We don't have that resolution in front of us tonight, right here. Just want to kind of point that out. Number one. So, and so I think, Vice Mayor Cowan, I would like to encourage you to, or any other councilman, to bring something forward, or we could maybe have a workshop on it to discuss how we want to address this issue. Because, and again, compared to the open market, it does seem like it's much higher. But also we have to keep in mind the differences between the government and the open market. Number one, especially in the higher level positions, tenure is not very long. We are fortunate to have a town manager that's been with us for a long time and does a great job. We're fortunate to have directors of our different departments that have stayed with us for a long time. Generally, that's not the case in government, and if this council goes out, their jobs are at the whim of the next council coming in. And you can see even from the cities around us how tumultuous that can be. The town managers they've gone through, and for example, in the city of South Miami, they're going through it in Doral right now. It's much different than the open market. We also know that salaries here, generally, they can seem high, but we've lost many people to the market because they can get greater pay there as well. We want to try to find a balance of maintaining an efficient government, one that knows what they're doing. And I'm going to remind everybody that it wasn't too long ago that Cutler Bay was recognized by the state legislators being the most efficient city in the state of Florida for cities our size. So we're doing something right, but that doesn't mean we don't ever keep a vigilant eye looking on how we're going to spend the people's money. So, again, when I was a councilman, I brought this up. Vice Mayor Callahan's bringing it up now, and I think it's a great idea. But it's a complicated issue and we need to find a way to address it, keeping in mind those things of maintaining a solid core of people. Cutler Bay also has the advantage because of our model of only having 37 employees. And that means we have a shallower pool of other candidates to fill in other areas. So the efficiencies being lost by people turning over is not as great here, which I think that's a positive thing. But everybody seems to be in alignment. Yeah, we need to do something about it. And this is our fifth hearing where maybe we could have worked something out before with another resolution, but I don't think that's possible at this point. I really think we have to sit down together and get a fair resolution that we have to be fair to our employees, the expectations of their jobs. We have to be fair to our citizens on being good stewards of their money. So we'll find a fair balance to do that going forward. In that note, I'd like to bring up one thing. In our budget, we have a budget for the salary of the town clerk. I negotiated the salary of the town clerk many years ago. Thought we got a really good deal. He was experienced, but not as experienced. And in the contract with our town clerk, I think it's important. We've been talking about COLA and merit. He has not got any merit in these years because there was no merit written in his contract. So since we hired him and signed our first contract with him, he has not gotten any merit. In his contract, he says, in addition to his annual salary, he has the right to come and ask us at the discretion of the council for an additional increase in his performance and his valuation for his salary. And he reached out to me and he did do that. And so I did do a survey of other clerks in Dade County and see what their salaries are and what is in range. And it ranges to, from, let's see, 135,000, another one's 173,000. Even our city just to the north, which is less than half our size, is I think that they're somewhere around 125 or 130, somewhere in that range. And we've got 121 budgeted for him this year. And so in addition to having the experience over those years, he also has achieved the milestone of becoming a certified municipal clerk, which I think also merits some consideration. We know the job that he's done for us has been exemplary. I don't think he's ever missed a deadline. He's never missed an email. He's always been on top of us. His handling of the election process has always been fair and good. And I do think that, that we take into consideration that he has not received any merit increases since we hired him, and do two things. Number one, I think we need to increase the budget amount for his salary this year to fairly compensate him. Number two, I think going forward, we need to talk about the inclusion of merit being available to him rather than him have to come to the council and ask for it. We can work on one tonight and the other one later. Okay. But I'd like your comments on that, if you don't mind. Councilman Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I think our town clerk has done an exemplary job since he's been in the full-time role for the past few years. I do absolutely think and agree that merit should be included moving forward, especially with the amount of work that's on his plate and the amount of things that he does, the services he provides to the town, as well as the ability that he has to continue to grow within the profession and to better himself and better serve the town. So I'm in full agreement, and it's just a matter of what we would change the line item to in this year's budget.
I was proposing we change it from 121,834 up to 130 even, which is an $8,166 increase.
I'd be in support of that.
Mayor Callahan.
Wow, I just got promoted.
Mhm.
Through the manager, can you just clarify something for me, please? Again, it's because we don't have that column between the two fiscal years. For the town clerk, 23-24, 101,910, 24-25, 112, 254. Is that solely a reflection on COLA and not merit?
Yes, because he's was not eligible for any type of merit increase.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Hold on, Robert.
Yeah, I'd just like to interject before we finalize that. So just to let you know, regarding the charter positions, town manager, town clerk, which are subject to evaluation by the council, in the spreadsheets that I prepare, I assume that they're going to get a 3% increase like the rest of the staff. Again, this is just a budget. It's an estimate. So, but I'm estimating because I don't want to estimate short and then council comes back and evaluates them and gives them a retroactive pay raise. It's going to mess up the numbers. The budget versus actual. So
Right.
in the spreadsheet that you're looking at, the 112, 254, that includes an assumption on my part that Mauricio will at some point get the 3% merit increase as the other staff have gotten. Same thing with the town manager's position.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Thank you, Robert. And again, we're talking about the budget item. Ralph, I'm assuming we could talk about the actual salary increase outside of just the budget approval. Roger, is that correct?
Right now, we're just discussing. There can't be a motion to amend the budget to reflect the changes that you are asking for or to implement them. The
Okay.
millage does have to be adopted first formally,
Okay.
and then the actual changes to the budget that you have been discussing can be adopted.
All right, well, let me circle back to the millage. Does anybody have any further discussion on the millage rate? No, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the millage rate.
So moved.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Callahan, second by
Second.
Councilman Lord. Roll call vote, please. Oh, sorry, Roger, you want to read it? No? Okay. We have a motion and a second, looking for a roll call vote on the millage.
Councilmember Duncan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Lord,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Callahan,
Yes.
Mayor Mirbach.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, on the budget item, I was looking at the item, I propose that we make the change to the clerk's office to being from 121,834 to be increased to 130. Is there any further discussion on that? Or any other amendments to the budget? As there are none, looking for.
I apologize, Mayor.
Oh, you need to read the trim notice?
We need to read the resolution title with the blanks inserted.
Okay.
So if Robert, you could kindly read that and we have a new motion on that.
Will do, Roger. Thank you for stopping us going forward.
Right. So section 2 of the millage reso shall read that the town's final millage rate for fiscal year commencing October 1, 2024 through September 30, 2025 is hereby fixed at the rate of 2.8332 mils per $1,000 of assessed property value within the town, which is 9.78% greater than the rollback rate of 2.5809 mils per $1,000 of assessed property value.
Thank you, Robert. Looking for a motion again.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilman Lord, looking for a second.
Second.
We have a second by Vice Mayor Callahan. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Lord,
Yes.
Councilmember Duncan,
Yes.
Councilmember Ramirez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Callahan,
Yes.
Mayor Mirabot.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. The second item is the budget. Again, I suggested an amendment to the clerk's office, increasing the budget limit to 130,000 even. Any other comments or suggestions on the budget? If none, looking for a motion for approval.
So moved as amended.
We have a motion from Vice Mayor Callahan to move as amended.
Second.
Second by Councilman Ramirez. Roll call vote, please.
I believe Robert has to read the
Okay.
total budget.
Yes, Robert, go ahead.
Okay, but I have to recalculate the budget. I have to make the change and recalculate the budget, so. you're gonna have to give me a minute.
We'll wait for you, sir. Should go up by $8,166 roughly. But I'm going to trust you. You're a lot better at this than me.
Yeah, Mayor, if we could have just Robert take a couple.
What's
minutes
the,
to
what's the
recalculate that.
change? Ralph, I'm sorry.
Increasing the clerk's office budget from the 121,834 total to 130,000.
So you're taking, so right now, you're saying replace, let me see here, 112. Right now it's 112,254.
Okay, it's 112. Okay, I thought it was 121. Yeah, okay.
Well, but then there's plus COLA and the merit pool. So I'm trying to figure out which number we're adjusting. So we're gonna start the year at 130,000 and then he would get COLA and be part of the merit
No.
pool, or
No.
Right, and if I could help, Mayor,
Yes,
I think I saw the intent. What you're trying to do there is the mayor is making a motion regarding to bring up the clerk's salary to 130 effective October 1, and that's going to have, and Robert will need a couple minutes because that also has an effect on the Social Security, FICA, and what have you. So if we could get like maybe a 5-minute break where Robert could calculate that, because I know there's a number at the end of the budget that has to change. I mean, it's going to be a small number unless.
Right.
You know,
Robert, I'll give you 5 minutes. If you need more time, just let me know. We'll leave the mics on when you're ready. You can just either let Ralph know or just talk over the mic.
I just want to be clear. So the 130 is going to be the salary starting October 1.
Yes,
No COLA, no merit.
correct.
Okay.
All right, council, we'll take a 5-minute break, talk amongst yourselves, but just don't talk to each other. All right, this meeting is back in session. Is Robert back in yet? All
Yes,
right.
I am.
All right, Robert, if you could go ahead and read the budgeted item, please.
Okay, so the budget resolution on section 2, there is a line item for total expenditures, and that amount will equal $117,003,701.
Thank you very much. Roger, any other actions to be taken before we vote on this?
Nope, just a motion on
All right.
approval of the budget as
All right, looking for a motion for the approval of the budget.
Motion as amended.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Callahan with approval as amended. Looking for a second.
I second.
Second by Councilman Lord. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Lord,
Yes.
Councilmember Duncan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Callahan,
Yes.
Mayor Mirabot.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. That takes us to, let's see. We had some other items on here. Yeah, real quick, 6A and give me 1 second. 6A, B, and C. Now, from what I understand, the applicant was not ready. And I think we need to go ahead and defer that. Ralph, what's the date certain that this should be deferred to?
So, Mayor, members of council, items 6A, 6B, 6C were kindly requesting a deferral to a date certain, October 16th. The plats were not ready for tonight's meeting, so we are deferring to a date certain, October 16th, with our next council meeting.
Roger, can you confirm we don't need to read the resolutions into the record?
Correct. This is a procedural action. You can
Okay.
motion to defer those.
Looking for a motion to defer all three of these items to October 16th meeting, 2024.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilman Duncan, looking for a
Second.
second by Councilman Ramirez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are deferred. At the beginning, we normally go through the town manager's report. Ralph, is there any manager report you'd like to give?
None at this time.
Okay, town clerk, any report?
I just would like to say thank you.
All right. The town attorney, any report?
It's a pleasure seeing you all tonight.
All righty. I think that covers all items. If there's no other further items, this meeting is adjourned.
Crucio's fine.
Yeah, he hasn't got